Okay, so welcome everybody. Tonight we're going to continue on emotional intelligence on the topics of anxiety, depression, anger, stress management, self-awareness, give you a little tips and tricks on how to better handle all of the stress that comes our way. And one of the most important things to realize and to keep in mind is that not just because of the pandemic, but the pandemic has taken the levels of stress and anxiety skyrocketing. So people were dealing with stress and anxiety and anger and depression way before the pandemic. So all of those people that already have health issues and therefore anxiety, depression, anger, and so on, for those people, those levels have gone up. And a lot of us, well, I'm sure, I have, and I'm sure that you have noticed that a lot of people behave towards you in a way that is not in agreement with you. You don't like how people behave towards you. You don't like how they talk to you. You don't like how they treat you. You feel like you might want to discipline them. And then you feel a lot of time in a family situation, you feel like you can't take it anymore, like enough is enough, and they need to get their things straight and things like that. And these are stressful situations to go through. And the whole country and the whole planet is going to a lot of stress. So when the collective unconscious is affected as largely as has been since the past couple of years because of the pandemic, then indirectly, every single person is going to be greatly affected with anxiety, depression, anger, frustration, lack of patience. They're going to snap, they're going to not feel good, and so on. The ripple effect of the anxiety that streams from the virus to the pandemic to the collective unconscious and then back to you into your own consciousness, the ripple effect is very large, very wide, and very rapid. It ripples rapidly because the consciousness has accelerated so rapidly lately. So there are tips and tricks that you can do to better manage that. And the first thing to do to better manage all of the stress and anxiety is to take a breath. It's just breathe in and then breathe out. And as simple as it may seem, it makes a great difference. And even if you're in front of that person that upsets you and gets you mad, and all you have to do is remember to breathe. Well, of course you're breathing because you're not dead. If somebody's upsetting you, obviously you're not dead and you're not in a coma, right? But the moment you have someone in front of you to upset you, take a deep breath and exhale. Now, sometimes you cannot exhale out loudly because you might cause more friction with the person in front of you, but you can certainly do it quietly, like so. And then do your best to, well, not all the time. I don't know about the corners of the mouth. Sometimes the corners of the mouth, they just plop down because of whatever reason. It doesn't mean that someone is angry at you, that there's just lots of medical conditions and illness that when the face is going to droop and then that person looks angry. So it doesn't mean that if the face is drooped that person is angry. So you know when someone is angry by the way they talk, or by the way they don't talk, or by their body language. You know, the body is going to move a certain way, they roll their eyes, or all kinds of body language like that. But the very first thing you want to do when you're in the situation is take a breath. And that means a long breath, not just, that's not a breath. That's anxiety. If you're breathing like this, that's anxiety, right? Or probably depression. So you want to, right? So it takes a few seconds. You count into 5 and count out to 8. And for some people, it doesn't, all these numbers don't necessarily work if people have asthma or different medical conditions. And then there's the box breathing. You count to 5, you stop to 5, exhale at 5, and again, a pause at 5. So breathe, exhale, pause. So that small few seconds, what that does, what that breath does, it activates your parasympathetic nervous system. It's not just a breath, right? It activates your parasympathetic nervous system. It oxygenates your blood and in your brain. And the parasympathetic nervous system helps calm down those processes that start moving inside your body, whatever processes you have that you're going through. So take a long breath respectfully towards the one that's in front of you, because the person that's in front of you and they're angry, they're going through something. They're going through some sort of pain. They're going through some sort of difficulties. They're going through some sort of anxiety, depression, illness, whatever difficulties, overwhelm. They're going through something. And lately, there's a lot of people that behave. You can't even think. Behavior is just gone haywire. Like earlier on TV, they showed that a firefighter's house was vandalized. Firefighters? What? Why? These are the people that come and save you when you're in danger. I mean, I understand you be mad at police. You kind of understand it, but no, you have to respect the police, because the police's job is to keep the order, is to keep you safe, right? But firefighters, who are they upsetting the firefighters? Completely vandalized. So the amount of anger, it has escalated out of proportion. And the good news is that there is help for that. And me and Randy are here to help you with that. And I'm gonna give it to Randy right now. Well, we can help you live as much as we can, but if you need more private help, then feel free to reach out to us and we'll help you more privately. But I'm gonna have Randy talk about Jay Haley, his mentor. Randy has had the privilege and the privilege of training with Jane Haley, and Jay Haley he's a genius amongst Milton Erickson. He's another genius when it comes to mental emotional health. So, Randy.
Yeah, he was a mentor of Milton Erickson, who's this very famous hypnotist. And Jay Haley sort of took the ideas that Milton Erickson demonstrated and broadened them to psychotherapy, basically. But he was a big family therapist too, and in the world of family therapy, which has kind of gone down lately. I mean, not gone down, but it's sort of not as popular as it used to be anyway. In that world, he was a genius. He's considered one of the founders of family therapy from way back in the 50s. This is just interesting to me, probably no one else, but he was working with this very famous anthropologist named, or very famous scientist named Gregory Bateson. And Gregory Bateson was a genius too, but they started studying the idea of humor and laughter. and what made things fun and enjoyable and what made people laugh and not laugh. And one of the things that intrigued them was how animals could pretend to fight each other for fun. Dogs do it, of course. A lot of animals do it, but mainly people have always seen dogs. They'll growl and they'll fight, but they're playing. It's the nature of play. And that intrigued them. And believe it or not, through a long, winding road, they got to hypnotism, hypnosis, and then family therapy. And one of the things that I loved about Jay Haley and Chloe Madonnas was that they rarely, rarely blamed anybody for anything. Rarely. And speaking of anger, one of the things that they, for instance, the way that we learned therapy back in those days is we would sit behind a one-way mirror where we could see the session going on. They couldn't see us. They knew we were there, but they couldn't see us. And there would be maybe 15, 20 of us, and we'd watch the therapy going on. And in one of the sessions, one of the clients was very angry with his mother. And the reason he was angry with his mother is he'd gone on a trip and had left her in charge of his pet dog. And his mother, for whatever reason, decided to take his dog to a vet and euthanize him. And this just absolutely devastated this client. And he wanted to know how to deal with his anger. He could never forgive his mother. And this goes to what Carmen was saying a minute ago. What Jay Haley did was the way he supervised this therapist, he would pick up a phone. This is back in the old days when they had phones. He'd pick up a phone, the therapist would pick up the phone in the therapy room, and Jay Haley would give him instructions. And he did. Jay Haley picked the phone up and said, tell the client that something must have really been bothering his mother for her to do such a horrible thing. And that sounds simple and almost too simple, but it was profoundly insightful. And it did, in one simple sentence, it kept this guy from blaming anybody. It kept him from continued being angry with his mother. He was able to, in one sentence, being able to see it from a different perspective. Now that doesn't work for everybody, and it was a one-time thing, and this was a one-time incident. A lot of people, go through a lot more trauma than that. But it was just a good idea about what, like Karma was saying, is to see it from a different perspective. And one of the ways that she mentioned, one of the most effective, if not the most effective, is to do breathing, do the deep breathing. She was just saying, because it calms, it tells your body, this is, it's okay, no one is going to die. This is, I'm having strong feelings, but I'll get through it. And body, just calm down. And why do we want that? We want it calmed down so that we can think better and clearer. That's what going to a therapy session does. Because you can talk about anger, maybe even get a little bit angry, but a good therapist is going to say, okay, let's look at some different viewpoints, or let's see this and see this, and can therefore calm that person down to a regular state of calmness. And measured breathing, that kind of squared breathing, does that for a person so that they can think through what is going on and engage their frontal lobe system so that their thinking can engage rather than their emotions. And So yeah, that was some examples, some of the ways. One of the ways I saw anger being held back by this, being treated by this back then. And it was such a profound. It just sounded so simple, and it was so profound. In fact, in the class I was in, after the session was over and everyone is out, a couple of people raised their hands and said, that really helped me understand what was going on within my family. And it was amazing. That was one of the reasons he was such a genius, because he could say these very simple things and they would be profoundly insightful.
Yes, yes. The most simplest things in life are the most significant, like the act of breathing, right? So a lot of people, because of low confidence or for whatever other reasons, they go to great lengths to um, for sophistication, all kinds of different sophistication, and they end up with more stress on their plate than otherwise, just because simple is considered unfashionable. Well, not everybody's into fashion. And before we go into fashion, we need to breathe, right? We all have needs. We need to breathe, we need to have air, we need to eat, we need to have shelter, we need to, whatever we eat, we need to eliminate, and all of that. So that comes before everything else. And I'm not saying that it's easy to go ahead and take a breath and resolve the anger right there, especially when it's family related, because family dynamics, there's a lot of magnetism to it. There's a lot of emotions attached to the magnet. That the moment somebody upsets you, you begin to remember what they've done 40 years ago, and maybe that person. Maybe they're not that person anymore. I mean, 40 years ago, it's a bit long, right? But even you see, like Randy brought a good point. If you look at your kitty cats or puppy dogs or even cats and dogs playing, they look like they're angry. And before I even knew, I mean, I have my two kitties, and when they would play fight, I at the beginning, I would go attempt to discipline them. And I did that for about a year, maybe a year or so, up until I visited National Park, where I was able to see two pumas, a male and a female pumas, and then two jaguars, a male and a female jaguar. I mean, I was fascinated. I love cats, so there was the tip of the iceberg for me to see that in action, and I was rather close to them. They were not in a cage, not at all, and I watched the pumas play, because jaguars, they're very lazy during the day. They didn't do much, right? But pumas, they were active, and you could tell who was a female and who was a male. Just you could tell, right? So they would play and play fight and play and play fight, and then the woman would hiss, and then the male would stop. And from a human perspective, you would look at it and you would say, "Oh, somebody's mad." Nobody was mad. They were playing. And then after she hisses and he stops, then she keeps on moving, and then he comes over and play, and then they play, and then she hisses again, and then he stops. And there goes a play fight. Now, those pumas, I have to admit, they didn't start rolling over like your kitty cats at home. They start rolling over and they get a growl that you think like the sky is falling over when they growl. No, they didn't do that. But even in anger, it's an innate mechanism. We are supposed to be able to feel angry. If we don't have the capacity to feel angry, that's trouble. That means your amygdala is not working right. That little thing, part of the brain that regulates your emotion and regulates your capacity for self-defense. But the trouble with anger is that is mismanaged, and we blame the other. I mean, there is no simple solution to how to handle anger, especially if you live with somebody and they're constantly angry, and they're angry every day, and no matter what you do, it's not good enough, and they're still angry, and you still go and please them, and they're still angry. So there's no easy solution to that. We're not going to fix it here in this talk right now. For that takes a session or two of hypnotherapy, right? But before you go there, when you're ready to go there, you'll come and ask. But before you go there, take a breath, see how that calms you, practice calm breathing yourself with a breath. Before you're in a situation, you can just imagine you're in a situation, and just imagining somebody's yelling at you is gonna get your blood boil, so to speak, right? So you can practice the type of breath that will calm you down. People that have asthma or other breathing difficulties, their type of breath, it will be different than people that don't have breathing difficulties, right? And then remember that person that is angry, something is not going right inside their physical body. Some molecules are just not aligning. There is an illness. There's not enough oxygen going through their blood. Maybe the metabolism is going bad. Maybe there's an infection going, and the body is trying to fight it, especially now with COVID, right? Maybe there is an illness. Whether the illness is diagnosed or not diagnosed yet, something is going on. And emotional intelligence it's a requirement now, but we also need to remember that it's a rather newer concept. And emotional intelligence is pushed and required in the workplace. Why? Because you have to behave at workplace. If you don't behave, the boss is going to fire you. So in a workplace, people have more incentive. Well, it's not the right incentive, if you ask me. People have incentive to take on emotional intelligence, to expand their awareness and expand their behavior through responding as opposed to reacting, right? But everybody needs emotional intelligence, not just at work, at workplace, because if you don't behave well, the boss is going to fire you, right? Well, at home too. If you don't behave well, you are going to hurt somebody. Yeah. If you don't behave well, you are going to cause stress to somebody, right? And if you're in a situation where you just snapped out of anger, you snapped, let it be a snap of 3 seconds, and then just say, breathe, and then come to realize, oh my God, I'm angry. Let's just lower my voice. Just say, oh, I'm apologize. That's not the right tone of voice. And then you calm yourself down, right? Because there is no fighting with someone that is in anger. I mean, look at the world going on around us. People pick up guns and they go kill children, or they do whatever. These people are not healthy. And mental emotional health, if someone still attaches stigma to that nowadays, I don't know about that. I mean, the whole planet is going through a lot of mental emotional health issues. Anybody that's not having anxiety, let me know what they're doing, what their secret is. Because I don't know how you go through an entire day and not be anxious about something. Have you done something right? Is it good enough? Right? But when you're in a situation that you have it in your family issue, in a family environment that that needs to be dealt with. It needs to be dealt with. So, Randy?
Excuse me. Excuse me. And yeah, and the only thing I would just add on to that is that if a person is having anxiety and anger or depression, and it's manifesting itself in different ways, if somebody's drinking too much, if they're yelling, if they're sleeping too much, in Louisiana where I live, if they're gambling too much, all these things are manifestations of maybe some suppressed anxiety or anger or unhappiness. Lots of people who struggle dealing with their emotions will act out, what we call act out. They will, in some senses, they'll drink more, they'll eat more, smoke more. And the most extreme is what we've seen lately, these shootings. That's called acting out. And if their self-help can help with that to a degree, but honestly, like Carmen was saying a minute ago, when it gets to the point that something's going on that you can't stop, smoking, you can't stop using drugs, drinking, eating, something that's like that, it's probably going to require more than just self-help. It's probably going to require talking to an individual at least once or twice to try and figure out what is being triggered. And I hate to say that because I'm trying, I don't mean to drum up business or whatever, but and I say that, and I'm just thinking, Carmen, actually, you don't have to see a therapist. There are self-help organizations for a lot of these problems. I know, like for overeating, so many people have benefited from Overeaters Anonymous. It's not for everyone. A lot of people don't like it, but it has worked for a lot of people. Alcoholics Anonymous, for instance, is another one. So, and that's just one. I think there's a bunch of different kind of groups now for alcoholism. So it doesn't have to be to a therapist, but it usually means that it's something inside of me that's gotten out of my control. And I need to get somebody in to help, whether it's a professional therapist or a self-help group or something. And doing what Carmen's talking about, like the breathing exercise, the deep breathing kind of exercises. And like she said, that's not just, it's very, very mindful breathing. And it's not just once or twice. It's doing it for 3, 4, 5 minutes. Oh, that's not that long. Well, it's a long, if you do it for 5 minutes, it's going to seem like an hour. But it does stop the body from making matters a lot worse. Agree?
Yes. That's very good. I just had a good thought, and I kind of lost the train of thought. I had a good thought I was going to add to what you were saying. Yes, about self-help. Yes, self-help helps you, and go ahead and do the self-help and take a course and take a meditation and I have my thought filling practices. Go ahead and go for it and do all of that. Self-help for emotional and mental health, it's like food, like eating every day for the physical body. It's just like that. So you do it daily and you come up with some routines that whatever works for you, that will work for you. And if you don't want to go see a psychotherapist, try hypnotherapy. The way hypnosis works, and hypnosis is not for everybody, but it's very effective. The way hypnosis works is not only you will be relaxed just by just by being there in a hypnosis session, you're going to be taken through the process of deep relaxation. That's a given, right? But what hypnosis does, hypnosis works with the part of your consciousness that stores the memory of having anger thrown at you, that it still runs in the back of your mind as a pattern, as a trouble, as something that still upsets you to this day. You can't shake it off. You've had enough. You can't take it anymore. So that part of the subconscious that stores all of those patterns, hypnosis works directly with that in an indirect way. When you go to talk therapy, you are most likely going to be asked to talk about what happened and to talk about how you feel when somebody is angry at you. To that effect, there is a process of re-experiencing the event to some extent, to some degree. Okay. Well, in hypnosis, we don't do that. Unless we do regression therapy, and I only do regression after I know the client really, really well. All unless the client comes to me and says, I want regression, then I do regression. Otherwise, no. Take a little bit of the time because everybody needs to be comfortable. And learning how to manage your emotions, it's a requirement. And compassion, it's a requirement nowadays. And to understand that that person who's angry in front of you, they're going through some sort of pain. And then to understand that you can only exercise control over yourself. I understand you don't like how you feel when they say or do what they say. But in that moment, you don't want to put more oxygen on a fire. You want to put water on a fire, right? And then the component of the collective unconscious that is full of anxiety and full of weird behaviors, like unfathomable behavior, is going to affect everybody's behavior. Not to mention that in a couple of past 2-3 years, a lot of leaders, doesn't matter what area of leadership they're in, a lot of leaders, they're behaving as if the world belongs to them and they are the center of I don't even want to say those words, like they're the king of the world. Nobody's better than them. And then they begin criticizing, or they begin threatening, or things that are, if you don't do this, then I might ask you to not come back to work. Things like that. Or, oh, if you don't do this, then I'll fire you. So these people in leadership, they go about exercising their power and control through fear and intimidation, right? And that happens not just at the workplace, not just in politics. It happens also in the places that are supposed to be safe places, like in religion, like in some spiritual gurus, some channelings, like there's a lot of channeling and higher consciousness going on in the spiritual circles. So what you want to pay attention to is the message you are given. Is it instilling fear and anxiety in you? Or is it encouraging you to do the best you can with the situation you have at hand and do your best and downregulate. So is it instilling fear or is it encouraging you? And lately, what I'm observing in some spiritual circles is that they make a sandwich. They encourage and they put fear, and they encourage and fear, and then they go about encouragement to say that, oh, this is how you're going to get encouraged, but if you don't do it this way, that this is going to happen. No, no, no. You know yourself better than anybody. And if you want to know yourself better than what you know yourself, then seek a professional. Yeah, that means you're going to pay for it. It's not going to come off of YouTube or Facebook. Yeah, because you managing your emotions, it has to be done in a way that is good for you. Yeah, you have to figure out the possibilities for you to do it in a way that is good for you without hurting somebody else, without taking away from somebody else, without hurting somebody else. Randy?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are all great points. The one of the things I saw when I was doing the therapy training was one of the things that I thought was very interesting doing training at this place that was called the Family Therapy Institute that Jay Haley and Chloe Madonis ran. They would have people coming in with a lot of unhappy family situations or marriage situations. And one of them, I remember this one too. One of the people that came in was very unhappily married. And unfortunately, there was a cultural issue too, because this was in Washington, D.C., so there were a lot of other cultures that were there from other countries working for their governments in the city. And some of the cultures just different than ours. And one of the things that one of the cultures did was restrict the roles that women could do. This is a long time ago, but still there for some. And beyond just restricting the roles for women, it gave the men a lot of freedom. And so they would treat usually women who would come in very dysfunctional marriages, but divorce was out of the question. It was just not culturally, it was out of the question. It would destroy everything. And so it was a question of what, and one of the things I remember Chloe Madonna saying to one of the people, again, it's one of these things that, you know, it just is like, yes, that's so right, but it's so, but it was a woman who was in a relationship that was borderline emotionally abusive, very unhappy. Culturally, she was all alone here. All of her family was in a different country. I don't remember which country she was from. It was a different country. All of her family was there. She's very much alone here. And the husband would never come to therapy. He was an ambassador, and there was no way in heck he was going to come to therapy. So Chloe, when they listened to her talk, and at one point, Chloe Madonis picked up the phone and called the therapist and said, tell her this, there's more to life than a happy marriage. And I kind of extrapolated from that, like there's more to life than a happy family. There's more to life than a happy this or that. And it's so true. And it was one of those very simple statements that have profound insight into it. And it helped her see, just like hypnosis does, see things in a different way, to be able to feel, see, experience life differently.
Yes, that's that's a good one. But I wanna stress out the importance of not breaking families, right? So there was an extreme case of a totally different culture where this woman was had difficulties. How do I say this? I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get in trouble. It's somebody that's having marital difficulties. So no, if you have marital issues, definitely seek help together. And if you cannot do it together, then seek help for yourself and try to understand what's a better way for you to manage what's there for you. Maybe it is just a temporary a stressful situation that you're going to. It doesn't mean that it's going to be like that forever. And if someone doesn't want to go to therapy, yeah, they're gonna go and they're gonna go, yeah, yeah, okay, okay, I'll do as you say, I'll do as you say. It's, I don't know about that, but families and marriages and families, they're the most difficult thing to do on planet Earth. Relationships are the most difficult thing to do. And there's no manual per se on how to do it. But some guidelines, emotional intelligence, it's here to give you some guidelines on how to conduct yourself, how to behave, how to, and it helps you, yeah, with the guidelines. There is no formula that this is how you do a relationship or this is how you do a marriage. And yes, there's culture and there's tradition and there's religion and there's all kinds of rules like that. But when it comes to your mental emotional health, emotional intelligence, it would be the guideline for you. And if self-help emotional intelligence doesn't do it for you, then seeking someone that can take you through it, take you through steps, take you to your processes, because we all have anxiety, we all have anger, we are all overwhelmed. Yeah, everybody at different degrees than other people, but we each have our own individual processes. Yeah, we all have beliefs and values and programs and traditions, and this is right and this is wrong, but we each have individual processes. And the way you process your things, your spouse or your family member is going to process those things differently. And it's it breaks my heart to see lately people that are stressed and angry and mean, and family members that they don't care about you. It's my way, your way, this is how I am, I'm not going to change. Some people are like that, and the best you can do is just be as compassionate as you can. I mean, there's give and take, and some days you're going to give more, and sometimes it feels like you're the only one giving, and it might be so. But do the best you can to help that family member to seek help for themselves. Anger, it's not an easy thing to deal with. Somebody else's anger, and we all have anger. But the most important thing to remember is do not throw your anger on somebody. And that means a lot of things, a lot of things. And I understand that it's the person in front of you that they say something and they misbehave and they cause you the anger. But you are the adult, the intelligent, the emotionally intelligent adult that is listening to this right now, that learns, that has the capacity to downregulate, right? So if you snap a little bit, you can then change the tone of voice, or you can simply say to the other person, please don't talk to me like that. Yeah. Or you can say to the other person, I respect you. I would like respect in return. Or you can say to the other person, I'm sorry you feel this way, but this is how I feel. And make all of your sentences without the use of word you, whatever language you're speaking in. There's moments in life when you don't want to use the word you. You state your position, what you like, what you need, how, whatever about you. And that becomes magical. I mean, I've observed situation when I made statements, and this is what I want, this is what I would like to see, and people stopped. They didn't know what to say. Why? Because there was no fight in that statement. There was no blame. I wasn't blaming, and I wasn't begging, and I wasn't complaining, and I just simply stated, this is what I want. So oftentimes we don't know what we want. So emotional intelligence will help you to get what you want. So Randy just got something he wanted. He got a new job, and he's the head of a behavioral health unit, and he's the only licensed clinical social worker. And Randy, I want you to talk a little bit about it, because there's such a big difference in between the social workers and professional counselor and family therapist and hypnotherapist and all kinds of mental, emotional health. And tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I'm the head of a giant department of one person, and that one person is me. So I'm the employee, boss, director, manager, the whole thing. My license is in social work, licensed clinical social worker. There are a lot of mental health things, people out there, a lot with different licenses and different things. It's never a good idea to go to someone who's unlicensed for mental health or emotional health. Now, a lot of hypnotists are not licensed. That's a different thing. To go to a hypnotist, I was trained by a hypnotist that did not have a professional license, but she was outstanding. Is outstanding. It's very good. And but she would be the first to say, oh, if there's emotional problems, I'm going to send you to a licensed professional. So, and I say problems, emotional struggles is a better way to put it. There's somebody struggling emotionally for some deep-seated issues or family issues or things like that, or say it's overeating, or say that it's overeating based in a lot of family conflict and stuff like that. She'll try some hypnosis, but she would send somebody else. So it's just a good idea to go to somebody who's licensed. And there are social workers who are licensed. I see a lot of these are licensed professional counselors. They're called LPCs. They come from a school. They're not everyone, but they're by and large based on an educational framework. They come from the educational school of thought. School counselors are under that kind of big umbrella. So there's licensed LPCs, there's social workers, psychologists who are called PhDs. They're also licensed. They have more education, and then there's psychiatrists who are doctors. There tends to be a belief that, well, the more education, the better a therapist, and that is definitely not true. Some of the best therapists I have ever worked with were just regular social workers. They didn't have medical degrees. Medical people are very smart and very well trained in medical issues, of course, and psychologists are very trained in their specialty, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're great therapists. Same for social workers. Some of my colleagues are great. Some of them not so good. How do you tell a good one from a bad one? Well, again, they should be licensed, and they're also, it's a very important thing to feel like you can trust them and you feel safe. And if that doesn't happen in the first 2 to 4 sessions, that's probably a bad fit. So that's just that's a very small, what am I trying to say? Small, very abbreviated version of that. You can find a lot of that stuff online, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But there's something I was going to add to what you were saying too, Carmen. That just to add one thing that you were talking about is there's a phrase. 2 things I wanted to add. First is there's a phrase that I used to use when I was doing a lot of individual therapy. I don't do that anymore, but that phrase is, just because somebody throws you a ball does not mean you have to catch it. So that's something to think about when somebody provokes you. If somebody throws you a ball does not mean you have to catch it. And the second is, I was just going to add this, throw this in, and then see what you think, Carmen. One of the things, in addition to therapy and self-help and all that stuff, self-hypnosis, going to a hypnotist, one of the things that I find myself helps, that I do a lot, is what I've noticed in my old age is something will drive me crazy and really, really get under my skin and make me angry. To a friend of mine, they blow it off. Don't even think about it. Well, why is that? Well, you're 2 different people. Yeah, of course. But why does something drive me crazy and somebody else is able to let it roll off their back like water off a duck's back? Why? What's the difference besides us being different? Well, it's how we think. It's how we perceive it and how we process it. So I'm always very curious if somebody is able to cope with something better than me. That's a lot. I'm always curious, how do they think about it? How do they see it? Because it's probably going to be a way that I have not considered. It's probably going to be a new way to think about it. I'm trying to think of a good example, but of course I'm coming up short on the spot. But I remember there was a friend of mine who he was able to deal with strong emotions in a session so well, and so he was such a good therapist. He was able to be patient with people. He was able to listen to them. He told me once, because I was doing some therapy work for some of his overflow, and he said that he thinks of it, because I was thinking I need to fix these problems real quick. They're in private practice and they need help. And he thought of it like, let it flow for a while. It's okay. Are they complaining to you already? No. Let it flow. And that his way of thinking about that changed my perception totally. So that's not a great example, but anyway, I always just because somebody throws you a ball doesn't mean you have to catch it. And number 2, how does somebody else cope? Somebody else that copes with this problem better than me, what do they think? What do they process? How do they see it? That's what I want to throw in.
Yes, and this is much more important than trying to follow famous people that how do they make that much money? Let me go about to make the money that they make, and let me follow their model because they're so successful and they have so much money. as opposed to exactly so, oh, look at this person, it's very calm and put together and never said an ugly word to me. And I wonder how they do it. Let me study this person. Let me model them. Let me see how are they doing. I'm kind of curious to see how exactly are they always calm, most of the time calm, right? So of course you don't want to be a doormat, but the of one of the most yes, how do I say this? Instead of being taken over by who's the most fashionable or who's the most successfully money-wise successful, or fame with lots of followers successful, how about we look at who's the kindest person, and not necessarily who's the kindest person, but when you notice kindness in somebody, just pause your thinking for a moment and observe it and say, oh, wow, that's what kindness looks like. The moment you pause that and observe it, it will register. It will register, and then when you need to show more kindness, maybe in a situation when it's probably not that easy to show kindness, you will know how to do it. You will know how to do it. And oftentimes it takes more listening than talking. All right. Randy, you want to add something?
Yeah, that's true. One of the when I was first becoming a therapist, shows how old I am, but we had videotapes, and I would tape my sessions so I could watch them later on to critique how I was doing. And so there was one time I was I was doing my notes in the office or something, and I was multitasking. I really should have been paying more attention, but I was listening to the session and I was writing down my notes about something else. And my colleague was next door, and he came over and he said, who in the world is that? It just won't stop talking. Who do you see that did so much talking in that session? All I could hear is their voice. You want to guess who it was? It was me, of course. So yeah, the idea of listening instead of talking, that was a big lesson for me to learn.
And you see, in hypnotherapy, don't allow listening to listen only to words that people speak. In hypnotherapy, what I do with clients, I listen to their processes, I listen to their ideomotor responses, I listen to their subconscious, and this is how I get results. And then when they're ready to hear what I observe, portions of what I observe, I disclose to them when they're ready to hear, but not a moment sooner. And oftentimes in hypnosis, I take people through imagery. Sometimes I walk them through specific images to walk through that to arrive to a therapeutic response. And sometimes I just have them tell me what they see in their images. And session after session after session after session, you just have them walk through images, you see growth, you see progress, because the subconscious works with symbols. It's not linear, it's not words and numbers like the conscious. The conscious needs words, numbers, and direction. It's rather rational, but subconscious, it's disorganized, and it's a storage mechanism. It's a very complex storage mechanism. And this is what makes hypnotherapy different than psychotherapy. And Like I have a client that she comes over and she's like, okay, I just, I want to go to sleep. And I say, well, we're not sleeping. And she's like, yeah, I know, but I want to relax. So she's looking forward, to relax, because it is very relaxing, and it's not sleeping. It's just that people associate relaxation with going to sleep. It's probably the only time when they get to relax, when they go to sleep. So then in hypnosis, when I have them lay down and close their eyes, it's almost as if you go to sleep, but no, we're not going to sleep, we're working. And the subconscious, it's working, and then it gets resolved. So I love hypnosis. I love neurolinguistics, and it's beautiful work, and it brings results. And
You,
I
you've been
am.
studying it for years too, huh?
Oh yes, I've been doing this for many years, and um, even sharing part of my stories with the clients. It helps them overcome their difficulties. Um, but I am so I somewhere in the middle of, I'm very proud of someone that stands out and says, I have a problem, I would like to work on it. I am just so proud of that person, because they know they're short. Nobody's perfect. I am not perfect. Um, and we're not perfect, but when you know that, when you're ready to work on yourself, I'm so proud of these people. And what I noticed in hypnosis, so far, every client that I had, they are at a higher emotional intelligence level. That's someone that just complains, and just complains and blames, complains and blames, and blames others, and blames others, and blames others. Because the real change begins to happen when you go about changing yourself. It's like, okay, I need to change something. I need to cope better. I need to respond better. And it's just so beautiful to see people's growth, and people's realization, and for them to go, oh, that big, oh, I didn't think about it. Oh, I like that. I can do that. Oh, I did it. Let me tell you how I did it. And I got it. And it was successful. It's just, these are such precious moments in life when somebody is willing to. Because if somebody is not willing, I don't know how much we can accomplish things with somebody that's not willing. I mean, we can accomplish to some degree some stuff, but the real change requires willingness. And I've been
Yeah,
saying since I'm a teenager, all it takes is willingness.
yeah. That it's actually pretty rare, not rare, but it's a good sign when somebody comes in and says, I need to change something about myself. And why is that? Because how can we change other people? How do we make people change otherwise? We can't just can't do it. So if somebody's seeing a therapist for 6 months and they're still complaining about everything wrong in their life, it's not going to feel very good to them because nothing's going to ever change. People just don't change like that.
Yes, it's not the outside that is going to change. It's us that we need to adapt to the outside.
Right.
And lately, the outside, the environment is changing so rapidly that it's hard for us to keep up with all of the changes, and it's overwhelming. So this is where hypnosis helps a lot with uncovering your processes, because some processes we are aware of, some we're not. And then it also provides a lot of healing in those places in your subconscious, that all the upsets, or the maybe not trauma, but just a lot of heartbreaks, the place where they were stored. It just provides healing, and I don't have to walk you through. I don't have to have you re-experience that. And if we do regression, past life regression or age regression, it is done in a state in which you are highly relaxed, very deeply relaxed. So that's therefore, if you have if you remember a bad experience, it will be something you see in a movie that doesn't affect you because you are in a state of relaxation. And this is how you trick your amygdala. You cannot trick your amygdala by talking to it. It's not. I don't know how you can talk to your amygdala by trick your amygdala by just talking to it and just talking and talking. I mean, by talking to it, you begin to learn about your processes to some degree. But in hypnotherapy, these processes are unveiled at a subconscious level. And then sometimes I just point at it and say, oh, see, did what you just did. Oh, see what how you said this, and see how you react. Oh, look at you now. Oh, you're smiling now. Why aren't you smiling all the time? Most of the time. Look at you smiling. Oh, you can smile. Okay, therefore smile more. So it's I love it, and I think I'm blessed to be able to do this and take people to the places to where they want to go, to achieve the success, to change their stress into success.
Yeah, and I think people can feel that from you, that they get that, they can feel that that desire to want to help them and to take them into a better place. It comes through. That's a subconscious thing that they can pick up on real quick.
I think so, yeah. I think so. All right, so I think we had a good talk today. So yep. we're gonna answer the questions in the order in which it is received. No, no, not like that. Send us your question. We're gonna address them in a live talk. If you need it in private, make sure to reach us in private. We're both on Facebook. And have a good night, and be kind to one another. Be patient, and do not throw your anger on anybody or anything else. All right. All right.
Good night.
Good night, and see you next